Hey there. Welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
I'm Doug.
Yeah, I'm Mike.
On today's episode, we're going to cover an update on the Tesla bot. We're going to wrap up Doug's road trip and dig into some cool SpaceX stuff that he saw. And we'll cover new CCS supercharging locations and other interesting things like that coming out. All that and more. Episode 51 starts now. Greetings. How's it going? Hey, gentlemen.
It's
Ooh.
going.
How's everyone
It's
doing?
going.
Oh man, another one. We're here.
Yeah, we made it.
We made it. Oh man, so the latest buzz, this new video coming out of Tesla on the Optimus bot. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. What are your thoughts? What are you feeling, Mike, when you see this? Do you want one? You want one yet?
I think they're about 4 years late to the game.
Yeah.
I mean, they're if you watch the video, it's doing things that other companies have done, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. This
Sure.
is not
Even.
new.
Yeah, even longer.
longer.
But I mean, I agree. It's, the individual actions themselves aren't necessarily that exciting, except for the fact that, Tesla hasn't been working on it for that long.
See, except in this scene right here where the guy's taking the objects and taking them out of it. If only the robot would reach over and slap him,
If only the video wasn't majorly sped up.
I think that's the goal. I think the goal is to reach out and slap him, right? We muted the video because of the there might be a
music,
content
yeah.
strike on the audio, but I'm pretty sure the audio is from Ex Machina when spoiler alert. The main human guy gets stabbed by the robot. It's like, okay, so we're expecting, oh, look at these nice fingers, and they're able to grasp.
That's right. Ooh, I can hold things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think that self-calibration is interesting, though. I mean, that's kind of neat. Again, they're not the first company to do that, but the ability to use its own visual senses to calibrate its positioning in the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's not so much what it's doing, but maybe the methods by which it's doing it. I mean, 20 years ago, there's some project robot I saw somewhere, and it would see objects and pick them up and sort them or whatever. And it was, not a purpose-built, but a sort of a humanoid-ish robot, and it was just really a platform for training robots, and it had LiDAR in it, and to see where the things are, and if it's using neural nets, are more popular than they were, 2 decades ago, right? So maybe that's a more versatile way of training. Later in this video, they show this guy balancing.
Yep.
And I wonder, okay, I was talking to Lewis earlier, like when I see a balancing act like this, I think about a feedback control system, which that concept and those things go back for many years, and the most basic is an analog PID system of feedback controls, proportional, I think integral and differential is the PID bit, and there are digital versions of that. But these are very straightforward things. If you have a couple parameters that you have feedback, so you could say you have some accelerometers and you're detecting where it is, and it's going to do it fast enough to come back and keep its balance. Are they using this with neural nets instead? Maybe that's interesting in some way.
I'm not sure that it matters, right? Like PID is kind of a standard, and it's been used, and it's used in so many different control systems out there.
Right.
Anything, even stuff with like humans messing with knobs and things, they use it for feedback on various stuff. But yeah, I mean, cool. I guess the neural net's probably doing it, and they're not doing PID. I mean, I don't know that there's really an advantage versus a disadvantage. Maybe a manufacturer or a cost advantage, although those chips are pretty cheap. So. I don't know. There's definitely some novel approaches they're trying, I'm sure, and there's some interesting things, and their team is kind of coming at it from a manufacturability standpoint and cost and other things. I'm still not sure that this is that impressive yet, but it's getting there, I guess.
Right. Like, so
Well,
20 years
so
ago.
let me.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to ask the question to both of you. So, as it's putting the pieces in place, the one thing I did notice is it's very smooth, and it seems to have a very good fine motor control
It's
of the
very
block.
slow. This
Well,
video is
okay.
sped up. If you look at what he's actually doing, like especially when
Right.
a person is there, it's extremely noticeable that this is a
All right.
sped up video because
Yeah, you can sort of tell, like, because there are little micro vibrations, and then in
Right
fact,
there.
look at this. Look at this video. It's not even continuous. Okay, you saw the guy sort of his hands darting around. When you saw the one block fall over, like, gravity isn't
Right.
that high, you know?
right, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but I don't know. It's one of those things where it's cool, and and if you look at it from like what humans are used to with technological development, right? Like we look at it and go, oh, it's doing this. That means soon it'll be doing this other thing. What we fail to realize is some problems are like, technical challenges with regard to like the science or the math behind it or materials or other things. Robotics has all of those problems, but then it also has major engineering challenges purely of the, it's interacting with the real world. It has to deal with reality and physics and all of these things. So it's like, is the improvement going to be on this nice smooth curve where like, oh yeah, it does this, and then 2 years from now it's in your kitchen and it's using your stove and it's chopping things for like, no, not even close. The problem just gets exponentially more challenging the more you do. It's similar to FSD, to be honest, right? Look at what FSD did, 8 years ago, and look at what it does now. Is it better? Sure. Yeah, it's better now than it was 8 years ago. Is it so much better that like you can go to sleep? No.
No.
Yeah,
So
that's part
yeah.
of why I wonder about, okay, are they using different methods that are somehow more advantageous? So 20 years ago, the humanoid robots that you'd see walking around, I guess the one that comes to mind is Asimo from Honda, and its main thing was it had a gyro spinning inside of it to give it stability. So it was using conservation of angular momentum to keep the thing from falling over.
Right.
This doesn't look like it has any of those sort of gyros in it. So if it's using a PID or whatever to maintain balance, one of the issues though is that that system has to be happening fast enough. Like it has to be getting input and updating fast enough that it can make the little micro motions in, like, at least in a human, it's like a lot of times it's in your ankle if you're balancing on one leg,
Right.
to make sure you don't fall over. And a PID or a net, if a neural net is able to do that faster, or if they're able to, have an array of all the different motors and sensors, all those are going through at once, as opposed to single sort of loop with an accelerometer and one
So,
particular
Doug,
motor.
how would you compare this against Boston Dynamics Atlas, which was the robot they had a couple years ago that could do the backflips and kind of do the parkour course as a demo?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that demo, it was actually shown in real time. Of course, it was a pre-programmed thing. There were
Yep.
things that would need to be calculated real time, like because there's going to be variations every time it does a flip and then lands. But for the most part, it's a choreographed motion. But obviously, that looks much more smooth. It also looks like a heavier, bulkier, machine.
More expensive.
And definitely more expensive.
Yeah.
So, the difference is Boston Dynamics has been doing this stuff for many years. Tesla's just doing it now. The thing is, though, you can hire expertise, right? It's not like you start from scratch. Why does technology advance exponentially? It's because we all, everything's built on top of what's already below it, so
Right.
the speed is dependent on what's already there. So that's, the definition of the exponential. So, Tesla can move faster. I do like that, they that sort of Tesla approach, the sort of first principles approach. Like if they can design their own motors for, okay, what is the in the demonstration they had? So what is the actual torque we need from a motor? How many Newton meters do we need to be able to apply? Are they using, simulating tendons or, motors right in the position of the fingers, for example? So I think the main thing, and Lewis touched on it, that, if they're designing for manufacturability, if this is a thing that can actually be built and sold to people, then that, okay, Boston Dynamics, they have the spot robots, and that, companies like SpaceX might buy one, but it's still not that accessible. Whereas, maybe eventually this will be fairly accessible. My one concern about it, though, is given the Tesla track record, is probably, say in so many years you can buy this thing and they're going to promise that it can do X, Y, Z, but right now it can only do whatever. And it'll be a software update before it does what it's supposed to do. And
then the computer will need updating.
And then to get what they promised to do, you actually need to get the new one. The new
That's
one
right.
will have the
new shiny
hardware.
new one.
Hardware
I tell you what, though, if they did do that, though, wouldn't that would really speed up the advancement, though, wouldn't it? It'd be kind of a forcing function if a bunch of people got robots at home that didn't do what it said it was supposed to do on the tin, and then the pressure of getting it fixed, and just the testing of like a zillion people having it, and how long until it picks up that knife and stabs you in the back, like Ex Machina.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, though. It's like, I still at this point feel like this is more about recruiting people to work at Tesla, right? Like, let's be honest, that's all this is.
Come work
this
on our
is
cool
come
stuff.
work for us because we have cool things that we're working on. And that's a fair, use of it. You can do interesting, they're a big enough company, they can spend millions of dollars on ploys just to get more people to work there, right? Like that's a legitimate thing to do. But at the end of the day, like, this is more, I don't know, I still look at it as like, this is more sci-fi, like, cool than it is practical, right? Like, many people have robots in their house today. Those robots are purpose built for a specific function. That is generally going to be better. It's certainly going to be cheaper than having a general purpose humanoid robot in your house, right?
You're,
like,
you're referring to the Roombas of the world and
Roombas, even as simple as like your dishwasher, though, technically is a way to automate something that a human would normally do, right? There are tons of things in your house that you do that are like tasks that you don't want to have to do.
That's
If
true.
you can have a machine do it for you, whether it looks like a humanoid robot, whether it's a little disc that goes across the floor, it doesn't matter. But from an efficiency standpoint, it's way more efficient and easier. Or I should say, it's way easier to make a more efficient machine that is purpose built for a task. So, like your Roomba, right? Like, if I had an Optimus, think of all the power and all the stuff involved with the Optimus working. On top of it, then it's got to have a vacuum that's plugged into the wall and it's pushing my vacuum around, right? Like, that's not nearly as efficient as my Roomba that's just doing, and I feel like that's, if we look in the world of how robots are used today, because there are robots used in certain industries a lot, right? There's, manufacturing, even Tesla for their cars, they use tons of robots to build their stuff. They're generally purpose-built robots doing specific functions. Now, they're programmable. You don't want it, if it's an arm that moves something, you don't want it to only be able to move one thing. It's nice if it can move multiple things, but still, it's an arm at the end of the day that's like picking up something heavy or welding something,
I wonder, though, certainly purpose-built can perhaps do whatever the specific job it's supposed to do better, and you can eliminate all the things that it doesn't have to do. But if you get a platform that's relatively general, then some economy of scale may come into play.
Sure.
And so, like, if they can make this thing, and maybe there'll be like a vacuum cleaner arm attachment or something, Clearly that's more trouble than a Roomba. But then maybe you can take that arm off and then have it do some other task, like cleaning the windows. Like that's something people hate doing, right? This thing could probably learn to clean windows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or your mirrors or whatever.
I want it to
right?
fold my laundry, right?
That's the main thing, right? The folding of the laundry. Some years ago, they showed a robot folding laundry, and it took forever, right?
Yes.
It would scan it up, look up and down, and that was one of those. That was one of those general sort of robot platforms, and it's mainly like a programming platform. Okay, here's the thing, and then now let's put some software on it to make it try to do something. And obviously, the worst part of laundry is the folding and the putting away, right?
Yep.
Putting in the washing machine, no big deal. Putting in the dryer, no big deal. In fact, you can even get washer dryer units that do the same thing in the same, unit, right? You don't even have to pick them out and put them in the other thing.
Yep.
But it's the folding.
I actually strongly considered going into that as a startup project a few years ago. Of like, if I wanted to make a robot or do something cool like that for my house, what would be the thing I would want to do it for? And that was the thing that I was most annoyed about, that I thought it would be the most useful. It's also an insanely hard problem and would take, it's not an easy thing to solve.
I got 3 teenagers. Their idea of folding laundry is they dump it on the bed and walk away.
I've tried that. That works. or the things that get wrinkly, like maybe some t-shirts. I just
slap it,
put them flat out and just sort of stack them and then just leave them. And
so I mean, it's cool. I would buy one if it could fold my laundry, if it could help out in the kitchen, if it could pick up the dog poop outside, or various tasks that people don't want to do. Are you going to want to spend $100,000 to not do that? No. The price point for this kind of thing it's gotta come way down. And I don't know. I put Optimus in one of those, like, if they keep improving it and doing stuff with it, it's decades away, not years away, to being useful, in my opinion. But
I mean, I think about the like Aibo, like a robot like that, which was really beloved and people liked, and then it just kind of ended because it must have not. It
was
been
a toy.
It was a toy, yes, but it had some parts in it that would need to be fixed and that sort of thing, and it had a little bit of a personality, I guess. I'm just trying to think, at what price point would people buy this, knowing that it can't do what people want it to do, right? Because it seems to me I think that's what's going to happen. It would get sold, if it ever gets sold. It would get sold, and it would be able to like sort of walk around the room and then sit on the couch and maybe do like a couple like parlor tricks, and I doubt it would do anything useful at the moment that it is coming into homes. So but would you pay 10,000, 20,000?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that's a personal decision up to the individual, but keeping in mind that it's going to also be like the worst form of an Alexa or a Google Home on steroids, with cameras and other stuff that it can stream to the cloud. Like, who's going to be willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars to bring that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people aren't concerned with privacy.
Imagine if they opened it up as a platform that people could code on, though. That would be cool, right? That
would be the way that I see this being successful. It's also very dangerous. Obviously, people could program them to do bad things, but we all know that this technology is only going to advance going the adult action way. Like, seriously, that
you might be able to buy some purpose-built attachments for this.
Like, that will be the thing that causes this to be developed and become popular, right? Like, it's literally what drove innovation on the internet and video technology and audio, like all those types of things. A lot of that stuff came out of inappropriate for families, adult related content. And I feel like that will probably be what ends up happening. And the problem is, if they open it up, that's exactly what's going to be made, right? Like, those things are what people will make. And would it be very successful? Absolutely. Are they going to do that? I don't know if they'll do that anytime soon. I mean, Tesla hasn't even opened up their stupid software entertainment system, right? Like, if they did that, it would be huge.
Right? Yeah.
That would be a huge. Please, Elon, please release an SDK for my car so I can write my own apps. But yeah, so I don't know. That'd be awesome though. But yeah, I mean, I would be willing to spend 10, 20 grand, something like that, on a humanoid robot that wasn't that useful, but allowed me to program it and do stuff with it as like as a really expensive hobby or toy. I'd do it. But I also spent 12 grand on FSD and bought a plaid, so I'm maybe not a normal person.
Yeah.
And that again makes me think of other platforms that didn't survive. Again, in the toy range, there was this thing called Pleo, which was like a really cute like robot dinosaur. And
I was thinking of Hero. Do you remember Hero from Heathkit? You could build your own.
Was that? Heathkit is
1979.
I was going to say it's much earlier. Heathkits are kind of before my time.
I remember Heathkit being a thing. It was definitely before my time.
There was a robot. There was a robot you could buy called Hero. That was a kit, and you could build it and then program it. Had a 8-bit touch panel on the top. It couldn't do a whole lot, but it was interesting.
Yeah,
and that was $1,500 in 1979. I'm not sure what that works out to be today.
It's like that episode of The Simpsons when Lenny says to Homer, and they see some robot. Hey, Homer, see all that stuff in there? That's why your robot never works.
Yep.
Well, I don't know.
Good times.
If they make the motors cheap and they mass produce them and they're able to sort of put this thing together, just looking at this figure, and for the audio listeners, we're basically just looking at the at a still of the robot doing it's kind of a yoga move where you balance on one leg and you outstretch your arm and your leg to balance yourself out in the other plane. But just looking at all these like this sort of cabling and stuff, I guess it's still just a project.
How long does it last on the battery?
Yeah.
How long did it take? How many takes did they have to take of this falling over before they got one where it looked good? How long did it take to walk into the room? Could it walk into the room without, all these types of things? Mm-hmm. They all need to be fixed.
You're such a pessimist, Louis.
I'm just saying, before it's a product, right? There's a lot of other things that have to happen, and I'm excited that they're working on it. I don't want it to just be Boston Dynamics. They need competition. Yeah. They need someone to push the envelope. Tesla's great at pushing envelopes. If Tesla never made another car, they still already changed the world and pushed all the other car makers into improving much more rapidly than they would have otherwise. So, like, great job, Elon. Good job, Tesla. Keep doing that. So yeah, I don't know. I would, we'll see. I would maybe buy one, but I'm just glad that they're there doing it, even if it doesn't become a product.
I wonder if they'll treat this like they're starting to treat the Tesla Tech, where there's discussions of, well, you can use our plug and you can use our technology, and we'll let you license the tech, for your own robot.
We'll see. Anyway, yeah, it'll be a couple years before there's any real movement on this. I guess next time they have to do like I don't know. Next time they need to raise some money or something, we'll see more about it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the next big event should be Cybertruck deliveries or something, right?
They'll probably bring one out during that event.
Yeah.
They need to have Optimus drive the Cybertruck out.
Yeah, or at least be a passenger. or start doing the robot.
That would be funny if they did FSD of driving the truck out, but Optimus was sitting in the Cybertruck not doing anything. But that would cause people to like lose their minds, I'm sure.
Oh, they would lose their minds. They absolutely would lose their minds.
That'd be pretty great.
Here's your onboard navigation. Meet Optimus.
It's gonna be like Clippy. Looks like you're trying to drive somewhere.
Oh man, that would be fun.
All right.
Alrighty, so Tesla Bot. Let's see. We'll see when it comes. But so Doug, we did a little bit on the last one about your road trip. You did come and hang out with me. So Doug and I got to meet in person for the first time and hang out. He got to experience the plaid.
But did you supercharge?
Yeah, my experience at the plaid was as a passenger going to dinner and then coming back.
That's
And,
true. We didn't have a lot of time. Let's not blame me. Let's not blame me. There's not a lot of time.
Yeah, so it wasn't
But
much of a
yes.
plaid experience, but I did, I got to appreciate the nice interior with the perforated seats and the adjustable screen,
Yeah.
I'm used to. So this is the newer plaid, so it's got the refresh,
Mhm.
which I actually hadn't gotten around to sitting in before, and they have the horizontal screen, kind of like in the 3 and the Y, but it's bigger. It's a little bigger, and it's nice to have that screen in front of you, and I do sort of miss it. And I feel like maybe that's maybe that's one of the issues I keep getting forced disengagements, because I kind of miss the signal. Like, it flashes blue, I guess, but I'm looking at the road, and
Yeah.
especially when it's bright out, I just don't necessarily notice it. And then if
Yeah, having the little screen in the behind the steering wheel, basically on the driver in the SNX, is really convenient for knowing that you're about to get disengaged, because it's changing colors or it's doing things, and you don't have to you can react in time, I guess, basically.
Right,
Um,
right. So I guess, I'll sort of recap on my trip, but to add to that, when I'm on the road, typically when I'm driving, right, you have a or at least what I learned back in driver's ed is just sort of have a routine. I'm looking at the road, and I look at my speed, look at the road, and I look at the left mirror, look at the road, look at the rear view, look at the road, look at the other side, and you sort of do
grab
that.
some spinach, eat some spinach, look at the road.
But basically, you
That's
have a
a
sort of
throwback
routine.
to an old episode.
Yes, I have a bag of spinach to eat. So with these sort of longer trips, though, like, I'm not really worrying about my speed so much. I'm not checking that as much because the car is doing that. And I'm just sort of sitting, but I'm looking sort of further down the road for weird things, and I will also check my mirrors, but maybe I'm just not as good at it, and I tend to just sort of look out in the road and just kind of scan around. Um, and because I'm not expecting to change lanes anytime soon, and so I'm not really checking my side mirrors so much, and but somehow, yeah, I get these forced disengagements, and it's so annoying. So I think I mentioned last time. So my trip was basically to Austin and back from DC, from the DC area, and I broke it up, and I went to Atlanta and spent a day there with some friends. And then on the way to Austin, I broke it up. I stopped at Shreveport just for the night, and then got to Austin. And so anyway, as I was leaving Atlanta, so I had a great trip to Atlanta, and then I had a nice sort of day in Atlanta with my friend, and they're really impressed. They're really impressed with the FSD. So driving around the neighborhoods. This is actually Decatur, kind of near Atlanta, and they're like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And the guy's thinking about getting a Model 3 soon. And I'm leaving early, like it's early Sunday morning, to head to spend the night in Shreveport before going to Atlanta. And as I'm leaving, I think I mentioned before, it's picking a weird place to supercharge since I'm nearly topped off. So I'm like, why do you want to supercharge so soon for like 5 minutes? That's just a waste of time. So I'm just kind of fighting with the computer, trying to like force it to go someplace else. And then it gives me, pay attention to the road, sort of, and then it disengages on me. And it was like, oh, you've had however many, 5, I guess. And I lost FSD beta, and I was like, oh no, I have just this long drive ahead of me.
Now I have to drive.
Yeah, and it was like maybe 14 hours or something, and yeah, come on. I mean, that's rough. I mean, I think the only reason I can do these really long drives, or even attempt them, is like, okay, the car is doing most of the work, and it's just less taxing, and just having to be at that level for so long, even with a break every 2 hours, I was dreading it. But fortunately, I still had navigate on autopilot, so I had that. And the main thing I mentioned last time that I learned was that, yeah, navigate on autopilot is much worse than FSD beta, right? FSD beta has had progress, whereas NOA hasn't. But so
That's
yeah,
true.
so I was in Austin and Houston, and then I drove down to Yeah, I think when I spoke last time, I'd driven down to Brownville. I think we did our last show in Brownville, and and I was just about to go check out Starbase. And it's a long drive. I figure, when am I gonna be in Texas again with my own car? So I went down there, and it was pretty cool and kind of share.
I
Let's
still
see.
haven't done this, and I live here.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a long drive though, right?
Yeah,
From Austin, it's probably, probably at least, I mean, from Houston with supercharging, it was like maybe 7 hours or something.
yeah. I think it's like
Um,
8 or 9 hours or something. Yeah, if I want to
yeah,
do it.
but it's just amazing, all this stuff like right up near to a public road. And it's kind of amazing. You sort of drive up, and you know, early you see Starbase like where they're manufacturing, and there's a public road that just goes right up, right up to these things.
Yeah.
Ignore the
Unlike
selfies,
NASA,
but
where you're 3 miles away.
yeah, sure. If you go to Kennedy Space Center, you're, quite a distance. We're here. I'm just
You
like
are.
right up on these things. And okay, there's a little fence, right? Private. You can't go past that fence, but right on the other side of the fence is the Starship, and you can like see the
It's awesome.
detail and the heat shield and everything. And here are some super heavy boosters and whatnot. Um, and I spent a couple of days down there, and that's neat. The beach is nice too, actually. Like in Boca Chica, the water's nice. The sand is fine, and the and like from the beach, you can like
And the
be at
beers are
the
cold. No, sorry, I didn't know
be
where
at
you
the
were
beach in
going with that.
Detroit, and you see, and we had a full there was a full stack of the Starship, which is pretty impressive. Here, oh, yeah, here it is here.
Oh wow.
Um, and yeah, so it's kind of neat. I mean, it was funny because you have people like when I was there, I met some dude on a whim flown from London, or not necessarily London, but somewhere in England. Uh, people, it's like a little like space mecca, and
Space Mecca.
and you can kind of there's some eccentric characters down there too. Uh,
Oh, I
you
can
know,
imagine.
there was like this one dude. It seemed like he basically lived in a camper, like right across the street from this thing. Like I couldn't just live there, but and Boca Chica itself is pretty light on resources, but a half hour away in Brownville is pretty normal town. Uh, and the supercharger is right next to a grocery store, so it's pretty convenient. Um, so anyway, I mean, this thing, of course, when I was there, people were really excited, thinking it might launch within the next week or so, and they were waiting for the FAA clearance. And it seems like the FAA stuff came through, but now there's a hiccup with the Fish and Wildlife approval, which hasn't even begun, which has to do with what we talked about previously, which was like, okay, they didn't have a deluge system, and if they're going to have a deluge system, they have to say something about where the water is going, because that water is now potentially contaminated, after being
Right.
Sure.
blasted with fuel. It
Blasted.
might contain some fuel or whatever. I mean, honestly, the fuels they're using are gas at standard temperature, so the fuel should go away.
Right.
But who knows? There might be other things. There are other there might be some power forks or things that they use to for ignition, and those things are
Right.
pretty bad. So, where is that water going? Uh, SpaceX seems fairly lax in terms of what they build. I think there's like a small sort of, pond, a sort of collection pond, but most of that water I think is just going wherever when they do and it's not even really a deluge system. It's more of a heat deflection system, right? They put a metal pad down with just perforated like a shower head, and there's water that comes out of it that basically keeps that pad cool.
Right.
So the hope is, instead of blowing chunks like they did last time, they just blow out steam.
Yeah, I mean that's how most of these sort of deluge systems work. But like if you look at shuttle or SLS, those huge deluge systems are also sound suppression systems,
Right.
not just for the neighborhood, but for the actual engines, you know, because the
Right.
the level of vibration can cause damage.
Sure.
And water takes quite a bit of energy to evaporate, and so that's a good way of removing energy from the system. And you know, evaporation is a cooling process. And
Right, it is.
why is it a cooling process? Because it leaves. You know, once it turns to gas, it goes someplace else.
Right.
So you know, preferentially the stuff that has the higher energy goes someplace else, right? Turns into a gas and leaves. So so it's a pretty good way of doing that sort of thing. But yeah, if they're not going to get Fish and Wildlife on board, then you know, obviously this thing's going to have to wait. So it is what it is, but it looks pretty cool. I mean, you can see the updates on it. Like you see these vents here. I mean, the difference between whenever they do this launch, it's going to be something pretty impressive because this thing is now set to hot stage, which is, you know, amazing and also kind of risky. So the thing's going to be
Cool.
accelerating the whole time. This
Now,
part's going to
riddle me this, Doug. A lot of times you have
I didn't
rockets
bring my
like this.
whiskey.
There's my drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figure I'd just go back a base. Typically, rockets like this are not designed to be stood upright for a very long amount of time. And yet
Yeah.
they're talking like 140-day delay for the
well,
fishing
I mean,
game.
this isn't like SLS where the thing was there and then you're worried about the like lifetime on SRBs, you know, or
Yeah, you got the battery packs
or
and everything.
some battery packs or something. I mean, honestly, like this thing in its configuration there wasn't gonna launch because they would need to destack it to arm the flight termination system. And they're able to do this stuff pretty quick, and they're pretty nimble about stacking and destacking. So, and they've already, I think, I'm not sure what the current state is, but they had, last time I paid attention, like maybe a few days ago, they had already destacked it, and people were hoping, oh, maybe it's going to launch soon if they destack it to arm it. But
That's impressive alone that they consider stacking, destacking to be just a normal activity.
I mean, I don't know, but they're able to do it pretty quickly. I don't know how big of a dance it is, but they, you know, they get it done. It will be really amazing to see this hot staging. I mean, that the top tank is methane, so you're going to have a rocket engine blasting at a methane tank and hoping that tank doesn't go,
Doesn't rupture, burst, leak, or otherwise.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. But this makes more sense than what they were planning to do, was to flip the thing and then centrifugal force will separate them. Now they'll just stay in a straight line, and then, you know, they'll just like ignite the second stage
push it
before
away.
the first stage is done. Yeah. So neat. You know, anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So I went there, and then from there I went to I guess New Orleans. That was sort of on the way. I thought I could check out New Orleans for a little bit before heading back to Atlanta to hang out. And I had a couple things that are sort of worth mentioning, some things like sort of some niggles that popped up while I was dealing with this. So while I was in Texas, it was very hot. I mean, most of the time it was triple-digit temperatures. I mean, I'd be driving and then, you know, get to a supercharger to charge. And then as soon as I step out, it's like, it's
Melt.
zapped. It was so hot. So I stayed at some pretty cool Airbnbs. Like I had one. So before I went to Boca Chica, I was in Houston, and I mentioned before I had a tour of Mission Control and stuff. And I had an Airbnb that was a townhouse near Johnson Space Center, actually walking distance from Johnson. So I left my car in the garage, and I plugged my car into charge, but I had an issue, which is that it was so hot, and this garage itself like was really hot, like it wasn't insulated, that I got a warning that charging has been slowed because the temperature is too high at the outlet, you know. So the car has some protection.
Wow.
It's detecting, you know, it thinks it's detecting joule heating, and that, okay, we need to reduce the current because the thing is so hot. And it's a positive feedback system that can be, you know, you could get a fire, say, because the hotter it is, the more resistance there is, and the more resistance there is, if you're keeping the current constant, the more heat there is. So it will reduce that. But this is just because it was just hot outside. And so it reduced me down from, this was just, 120 volts and 12 amps, which is fine if, I'm parked there all day and I walk to JSC, but it like dropped it to 6 amps, which was like, okay, this is pointless. It's pointless being plugged in at that point. And yeah, and
You
I
get
went
1% during all the hours you were out.
to, I don't remember. Might not have been enough to maintain
The
you know,
HVAC for the battery.
the HVAC for the battery, and I had the Sentry mode on too.
Mm.
And something similar happened when I just spent I just spent a day in New Orleans, and mainly I was going to Atlanta, and I figured I needed a break because coming from the southernmost tip of Texas, even getting to New Orleans, it took a while. I think maybe that was 10 hours or so.
And you're driving an SR Plus, right? Or you got a
I'm
it's not
driving
long range.
what was called the mid range. Yeah,
Mid range. Yeah.
yeah. In fact, you can't even find it. Like when you try to register the car, all you can do is say long range, but it's a lie. It's mid range. So shortly lived as a bit of a cash grab, which I fell for. So yeah, I mean the thing is the range is enough. I'm drinking water and stuff, and by the time
Well,
that
I'm just comparing notes because I've got an SR Plus and I get
uh-huh.
190 miles.
Okay, so
to 200.
SR Plus, that means standard range, but they gave you a fancier interior. That's what the Plus
They did.
is. Okay,
They did.
so it's just standard range is what matters, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But, I hear a lot of people talk about Tesla's short legs and how you can't road trip it. And yet here you are gallivanting around the countryside, a lot and seem to be doing pretty well with it.
Oh yeah, I never had any issues with range. I never had a problem of I'm not going to be able to make it to that supercharger. Like I said, I mainly would like try to make it go a little farther. I prefer fewer stops, longer. If my stop's only 15 minutes, that's actually a pretty short stop.
That is a short stop.
And it's somewhere like 20 minutes or so. And occasionally, I just sort of wonder how it's calculating. I would assume the thing that you optimize for is time. So what's going to take the least amount of time? It could optimize for energy. It could optimize for distance and all these other sort of efficiency type things. But I hope it's optimizing for time because it seems to pick.
It make the most sense.
It seems to pick superchargers that are, even if even if I have enough range to go to a farther supercharger, so I can eat in, I can go down to like 15% instead of 20%, say,
right.
State of charge. It seems to pick a closer one that is closer to the highway, so I have less of a detour to get to it. And so, even though, I could drive for longer, it's picking a closer one that maybe it makes the total trip shorter. You hope. But I did have some issues like with navigation. Sometimes it would seem like the navigation and the autopilot or FSD would get desynced or something. I think what was going on is there might be some construction, say, and so you would have like what would be like going one direction would be quite a distance from going the other direction. There might be like a very large median, and instead we're all on the same side because there's construction on the other side. So maybe it thinks I'm not on the road, and then it keeps telling me, I need to make a U-turn to get back on the road that I'm supposed to be on.
I've seen that. Yeah,
and it's doing it like every few miles, and that was kind of annoying. But okay, I could just sort of ignore it. One of the worst things was, the traffic rerouting. Like, I'm not sure how often it is, looking at traffic or thinking about my state of charge and sort of recalculating the trip. And sometimes I would just sort of purposefully remove the supercharging stops and then add them back so it would sort of recalculate them.
It forces a reset. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes it would take quite a while. And I was like, why are you taking that long?
So yesterday on my trip, I was doing a long trip yesterday. I had an incident. I've never had this happen before where it would recalculate my route, but it was basically taking me off the freeway up to the on ramp and then right back onto the freeway because it figured out it could save 2 minutes, if I had done that. And yet I was telling my daughter who was with me, I said, the fallacy of that is now you have to merge back into traffic, which is a bit of a challenge when it's really stop and go. So what's the point?
Yeah, and I've seen that several times, and I'm always a little bit confused about it. But for example, this last time I had I think I was going from New Orleans to Atlanta, and there was some road that I guess was having traffic, and sometimes I have my phone to look at the Google Maps to see what the traffic is, because that updates, I think, much more
almost near real time.
Yeah, near real time. And so, the car was going to take me off the road, and I'm like, why are you taking me off the road? It looks like it's the same direction. I'll just stay on. So I skip its first suggestion to get off. So I stay on, and then eventually, I hit some traffic. So now it's suggesting I get off, and I'm getting off in a mile. So basically, I'm in stop and go for a mile. So I'm just sort of sitting there, and the traffic is really slow. It's like, pretty much stop and go. But as I'm approaching that exit, things start to clear up, and so I've been waiting for a bit, like maybe I'm in stop and go for 20 minutes or so, and that traffic's starting to move, and it's still committed to taking that exit, and it hasn't recalculated anything.
Roll the dice.
And as it's exiting, I sort of refresh my Google, and Google has gone from red to yellow to green. It's like, it's all green now. I'm like, no.
Don't get off.
You couldn't figure that out in the time we were sitting here that, by the time we get up here, it's going to be fine. And it added quite a bit. It added like another, it took me off, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go with what you're telling me to do. It would have been better for me to actually just turn around and try to get back on the highway, but I was going to try to let it do what it thinks is best, and it wasn't best.
I did have an incident that you'll probably appreciate. So we were coming into Phoenix, and they shut down the entire freeway, all lanes leading into Phoenix. So literally, it's something like 6 or 8 lanes of traffic are all getting off to go around town. And Tesla told me to take this route that took me like way out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm looking at Apple Maps, and I got Google Maps, and I've got Tesla Nav System. I got all three up, trying to figure out what's going on. And what Tesla had done is they had looked at the rest of the roads where everybody else was trying to get around this, and decided it was too much of a wait, and I could actually save at least 10 minutes by going way out here to the Indian reservation and cutting across the Indian reservation on this little 2-lane road and pick up the freeway on the far side of Phoenix. Now, that requires a level of trust with the nav system.
So was Tesla right?
It was right. It was right.
I mean, Tesla has a long history with the Indian reservations, so
they do. But I'm telling you, when you're driving out there and there's
where they sell their
nothing
cars
around you,
they're not allowed to sell. It was a joke at the dealer model. Sorry, he looked confused and concerned when I said that. I was just explaining the joke.
When I was thinking of Poltergeist for some reason, when they built it on a burial ground, they didn't move the bodies. Right. Okay,
but yeah, I mean. I've learned to trust the nav system to a large degree, but it's a little flaky around the edges every now and then.
Yeah, sometimes it just seems locked, like it's trying to update, and it's just sitting and spinning, and then I'll just update. I'll just end it and then start again, and then it comes back. So I don't get that. Anyway, but overall, it's a good trip. Everything was, I never worried about range. That was never an issue. I just worried about like, can I hold it long enough? Like, the next stop isn't for an hour. Can I hold it for that hour? Or maybe because you want to make maximum utility of your time, right? So like, maybe I'll just go to a closer supercharger for my bathroom break, even though
That's right.
I don't need to charge yet. So that's the main thing. It's just the regulation of the bodily functions. I think is probably one of the main
A
parts.
little challenging. Yeah.
I'm never worried about charging. It's just, like you get, like I'll have some tea, and sometimes I chug that tea, and then you're like, oh.
That's a mistake.
So what you're saying
this whole volume has disappeared, and like it needs to go somewhere. And
That's
you're like,
right.
I'm waiting for Tesla's, to use the video in-cabin footage to determine the ages, genders, and number of people in your car, and then watch how much they're drinking to calculate based on average bladder size, and it will know when you need to stop.
Well, they might as well measure some physiological things. When I spoke about was it Vin AI, the Vietnamese company, they were using the cameras to look at things like heart rate and are you how are you feeling? Are you drowsy? Are you having a medical issue? And they might key into your smartwatch and look at your heart rate and look at like the Apple Watch will tell you if it thinks you might be having a cardiac event or something.
The nav will
I was just thinking if your heart rate, if your heart rate's going up, they're going to say, "Oh, are you stressed? Let me put some calming music on for you."
Yeah. Plenty of things you could do. I guess one of the other things I just wanted to mention is, and this is the worst. I'll be driving in the evening, and I will often get these FSD. Let's see, something reduced. I forget what they call it. Maybe degraded. Yeah, the capabilities may be degraded because of road conditions or whatever, right? And the worst one would be camera may be occluded, right? It thinks the camera's occluded, so it goes a doo-doo-doo, and this is happening like every minute. There's a doo-doo-doo. Camera, FSD capabilities may be degraded because a camera is occluded.
I can't see. Yeah.
The camera is not occluded. It's just dark. Okay. It's just dark. So it just can't see anything. Right. And it's thinking the camera's occluded. And that's the sort of the downfall of having, a passive sensor like that, where, just because it can't see anything doesn't mean it's covered up,
Well, Tesla Vision is going to save the world. I mean,
So I think about that as a sort of an engineering problem. Like if it had, I don't know, like Tesla doesn't want to do LiDAR or whatever, but imagine if it had LiDAR, it wouldn't have to be on all the time. But when it thinks the camera is occluded, it could, all right, just send a ping out, see if there's anything out there. Or, the whole Tesla Vision thing for replacing the parking sensors, and say it's dark and here's the nose of the car. I guess you have headlights, but maybe, I don't know, maybe just can't see, right? Like maybe have an infrared sort of ping, or, it doesn't need to be on constantly, but just let it know. Just check. See if there's anything there. Because that was so annoying, okay? You're driving. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you're listening to something, if you're listening to music or a podcast or something. Whenever those alerts happen, it reduces the volume of whatever you're listening to.
That's true.
To make those alerts come out. And that happening every minute. It's worse when you're listening to like a story or a podcast or a book on tape or whatever, because you miss it.
Lose something.
They call those audiobooks now. By the way,
audiobooks.
People don't know what tape is anymore.
Books on tape. Damn it! I've got my cassette adapter in my Tesla.
I'm not really dating myself. It's just that when I was a little kid, I was very precocious, and I listened to them when I was quite young. So I listened to there were books on tape from the library back then.
Books on MP3.
Yeah. So anyway, that was probably one of the most annoying things. I'm coming back. It's late at night, and you have to hear that every minute. It's like, come on, man. And it must be the side cameras, right? There's nothing illuminating the sides. There's no car behind me. So just can't see anything to the side. I mean, to the front, there are headlights. So it definitely sees something. It sees the road. But yeah, that was really annoying. So anyway, I'm hopeful for the future, in terms of what things they add and what things they are able to fix, and there should be a software fix for this. There must be,
Probably,
because that's just
everything can be
that's
fixed in
annoying.
software. That's just the way of the world.
Yeah,
That's right.
Well, speaking of road trips and things that help with road trips, Mike, you're gonna give us a little detail on this new CCS supercharging station. I guess the company's called Rove, something like
It's
that.
called Rove. It's called Rove,
Okay.
Rove. Um, Ironically, they are not known for charging. This is something new for them. Uh, we got I say we as the community got a announcement in our local newspaper, and it's been picked up by a lot of other folks that they here we have a small town called Santa Ana, and there is a EVgo station that's got, I think, 10 stations, 350 kilowatts. And within a block is an EA station of maybe 5 stations. And Rove announced, complete with an artist rendering, that they're bringing in a 40 station EV charging center. And what it is, it's much like the Tesla lounge up by Kettleman. If you were to go up to San Francisco, and there's a little town called Kettleman where they have a Tesla lounge you can stop at. And they got the solar panels up top, and they've got the lounge you can go in and get a cup of coffee or get some food, and little workstations set up. And they have listed a page right from that where they are going to be offering 24-hour lounge. They'll have the coffee, they'll have the food, there'll be a car wash, free Wi-Fi, restrooms available. It's 1.2 acres, so it's going to be pretty good sized, and it is CCS. So this is the first foray into what I'd consider to be a large scale supercharging equivalent for the CCS users. They plan to bring out 5 more here in Southern California. They've rattled off a list of places: Long Beach, Torrance, Corona, and a few others. If the reality matches the rendering by any stretch, it'll be a pretty cool thing. And no, I didn't see, nor can I find anything where they'll have the Tesla charger.
I was gonna ask.
Well,
Okay,
it looks
so
cool. I'm a little bit.
the North American charging standard isn't
That's
mentioned
right.
anywhere.
Can't see it referenced anywhere, but I've got my CCS adapter, so I'm good. I don't care. But yeah, this is
Yeah,
this
so I'm
is
a little bit.
good news for anyone that's using CCS.
Yeah. So, like I
What
was
do you
saying,
think, Doug?
I'm a bit skeptical. Huh?
You like that
What's
clear
that?
glass that's supposed to be solar cells?
Yeah. So I don't really see if that's. Well, I mean, a canopy is nice regardless. It should be solar cells though, if you have the money for it. I'm not sure that this kind of model makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's good to have a lot of chargers, but there should definitely be along major highways, because the only people that really should be fast charging should be people that are on a trip, right? Hopefully your daily commute you can handle with some kind of home charging situation. Not everybody has that. People live in apartments and whatnot.
So
But also just
I would,
to be able to support the thing, right? The cost of the place.
yeah.
I think the model, like the Bucky's model or whatever, makes more sense, where you have, it's not just EV drivers that are going to enjoy whatever the lounge is. It's just everybody that is commuting. And then, maybe as time goes on, some of those gas pumps, get replaced by charging stations. But, you don't want to limit 90% of your potential customers. I don't think, right? On the retail stuff, right? The retail
I'm wondering
lounge
what's
stuff.
driving this is you've got a lot of agreements with EA in particular and EVgo with the OEMs. If you buy a Mach-E, if you buy a Mercedes, if you buy, a Chrysler or something like that, they've all got these agreements where you get free charging, but it's just garbage. And I'm wondering if they're hoping to leverage that, because in talking to people at the CCS chargers, a lot of them do not have home charging. They're living on those CCS chargers, or at least trying to. There seems to be a very different mindset from the CCS consumer versus the Tesla consumer. Yeah, I couldn't tell you why. I haven't really done any in-depth talking to them. It's just, chit chat as you're standing there wasting time charging.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. There's maybe something to be said about like Doug mentioned, a lot of folks are in apartments or things where they can't necessarily have home charging, although more and more apartment complexes are adding that in or making that a viable option. I have a neighbor that, bought, we talked about EVs because they saw I had, my Tesla, and they ended up buying some Audis and things like that. And the, there was a challenge for them to get their home charger installed. It cost a lot of money because when the house was built, it wasn't built in a way where it expected you to be running this line into the garage or whatever, right?
Sure,
And it's new construction. I mean, the house was only built, in the last 5 or 6 years. So I think that there's something to be said where there's going to be folks that charge at superchargers regularly. That's the primary way of charging. I agree with Doug though that that's not really ideal for both the person, but also for our electrical grid and the infrastructure that we have in this country. Centralizing these super high power need spots where people all go to and you're waiting around. It's hard to do for like the infrastructure and routing of all the power and all of that. And then also you have this weird, you got to provide services for folks, which
Yep.
kind of gets back to like, almost, having like those road, highway rest areas. Although now you're talking about having them not by highways and stuff, like in this case, which is just, I don't know. I don't see how it's economical to do in the long run unless they charge ridiculous rates on the electricity, which kind of defeats the whole benefit of having an EV in a lot of cases.
But let me ask you this. In fact, I'll throw this out to both of you. So on my car with my short legs and my small battery, charging at home is actually pretty reasonable, even though I've got 4 EVs. But if I had a Rivian, or a Mach-E with a 100 kilowatt pack, or some of the other vehicles with these huge mega packs because they're just kind of inefficient, charging at home is not that practical, especially if you got multiple cars.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It's more about how much you're using each day, though,
Yeah,
right?
it's how much you drive is the real
It's
thing.
how much you drive because my car has the Model S Plaid has like 110 kilowatt pack in it or whatever.
Sure.
Kilowatt hours.
Kilowatt hours, I should say. Yeah, kilowatt hours.
Talking about energy,
and
not power.
yes, energy, not power. And the it's I've never had it take more than a couple hours to charge because I'm not driving enough to where I need more than 3 hours to get back to 90% or whatever. So yeah, I mean it depends. And I could easily run at my house. I could run another line that I did dedicated. You could split it across 2 cars. So yeah, if you have 5 EVs, like okay maybe, and everybody's driving. You have a big house and lots of people driving all over. Sure, like I kind of get it where maybe you don't have the infrastructure depending on when your house was built, but most people I don't think have that scenario, right? Like most families probably have 2 cars in the US, if I had to guess, on average.
That's probably reasonable.
Yeah. And 2 EVs is not a problem for the vast majority of single family homes. And certainly with apartment buildings starting to, or they're putting in chargers.
No.
I think it's less of a problem.
I've seen this where the new EV owner, which is used to gas, treats the EV like a gas car, where they could run
100%.
it to E, and I've got gas. I'm good. I'm going to take it all the way to empty, and then I'll charge it or fill it or whatever they want to call it. Yeah. I see that as a bit of an educational problem. To get people, you don't have to fill your 100 kilowatt hour pack from zero. You can top it off every day.
If it's in my garage, it's plugged in, right? Like it doesn't matter. It's plugged in. You want it plugged in all the time.
Why do they do that, right? Because it sucks so much going to the gas station, right? It really does suck to go there. So you're going to run it till empty. But yeah, if you can just plug it at home, and that's an experiential thing. Once you get used to that, like, oh, as they say, every day with a full pack or whatever. Honestly, if it's
That's
me
right.
and it's every day, I only charge like 60% or something, right? Because I'm not really driving that much, and keep the state of charge, in a more happy place for the calendar life of the battery. But yeah, and if I know I'm going to go someplace, then I'll get it up to 90 or 95 or whatever just before leaving.
like I said, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out across these 5 sites, or at least this one site, to see if they can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a positive that more companies are looking at doing this type of thing, right? Like, we do need more charging stations across the country and across the world, in various countries. It'll help the adoption become more widespread. It'll make people less concerned about it. But yeah, I think the mindset is really the problem, right? People think that I need to have a gas station all over the place because they are used to this idea of needing to go and get gas. And yeah, I've had my car for over a year. Granted, it has a large battery pack and I don't drive, I haven't road tripped it at all, but I've never not charged it at home, never even needed to. And I feel like a lot of people could operate that way, right? Even if you're commuting. Now, granted, I'm working from home right now, but even when I was commuting in Austin and going downtown, I would still only ever need to charge at home. So, yeah. But yeah, it'll be good for more of these things, especially for road trips, and to alleviate folks with their concerns, so they're more willing to purchase an EV.
Well, I guess time will tell.
Yes. Alrighty. So another topic to bring up, we probably should have mentioned it in our last show. I don't think we did. Is that FSD's price was reduced? Isn't that crazy? So this thing that seemed like this cash cow, right? Tesla's been, as FSD has improved a bit, they've been raising the price up. Now, most people would probably argue the price was the perceived value of what it would be once it was fully delivered, and not the value of what it was actually capable of as they were raising the price. But they did raise it all the way up to 15,000, and they've since backpedaled. So I think 15,000 was last year. They raised it up to 15,000. I think it was about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. It was the early 2022, the beginning of 2022 in January, when they raised it from 10,000 to 12,000, and then later in 2022 they raised from 12 to 15. Now they've since dropped it back down the beginning of this month from 15 down to 12. And so what I would guess is that they weren't seeing nearly as many people buy as they raised that price up, because let's face it, the resale value is not there. And if the hardware upgrades and things aren't carrying through, like, what is the value, right? If you're not going to upgrade my hardware for free, and when I sell the car, I'm not going to get that money back. If I don't think I'm going to own the car long enough, like, why am I spending that 15 grand for the thing I'll never have? So I thought it was interesting. They dropped it down to 12,000, all out purchase. Still, our recommendation is the subscription is probably the better way to go.
I'm paying $199, and it's been that way for 2 years.
Yep. And if you have the enhanced autopilot, it'll only be $99 a month. So I still recommend subscribing, but yeah, it was interesting. I was a little amused that they dropped the price. I'm wondering if they'll even ever drop it again. I was almost surprised. Why didn't you go all the way down to 10? 10's a nice whole round number,
Yeah. I think part of it is, they've been doing overall sort of price cuts, right? On the vehicles. And then, like, if you can get a Model 3 for, what's the current price? Like close to 40 or something, right?
Well, with the tax credits there, it's like 34. I mean, it's insanely cheap right now.
That's okay. But now imagine basically a 50%, like 34 or something. That's like 40% of the cost of the vehicle is the software. Then that's quite significant. And I mean, they are able to tweak their pricing pretty easily, right? They don't have a dealer network of a buffer. So yeah, if they decide, okay, well, this thing, and like, if they're able to sell FSD, that's basically free money, right? They're selling software, right? Like the incremental cost to them for someone else getting FSD is basically zero, right? Whereas, okay, now you got an extra 15K. If not enough people are doing the uptake, then okay, let's drop it to 12. And I'm sure they're pretty good about modeling this out and say, oh, well, at 12K, we'll get more people to do it. So yeah, why not?
I'm honestly surprised they don't have two prices, one for Model 3s and Ys and one for Model S and X. Because you know the S and X folks are already willing to pay more money for the car. They probably, on average, will
Yeah,
have more disposable
but
income.
if it
It
has
would
no
piss
extra,
off people.
yeah, if there's no extra capability, how do you justify it? Not that they wouldn't do it anyway and come up with some kind of fake thing.
Yeah.
It makes me think. We had a let me add this. We had a thread. We haven't quite been doing threads of the week lately, but here's a thread recently, and this guy is Goose66. And it says Tesla FSD, a 5-year perspective. So, you guys can go check this out if you want on TMC. I think we probably have it up on the front page somewhere. But basically the guy gives his story, which is very similar to mine, right? He started with enhanced autopilot. He got his car August 2018. I got mine December, and he paid the extra $2K to get FSD. Now I know if he paid $2K, that's when they had the little break, because it used to be an extra $4K, but they dropped it down to $2K. And you really got nothing. You got nothing for that 2K. There's no extra capability or anything at that time.
You got the promise for the
just
future.
a hope.
You got the promise of a hardware update. And if he got his in August, he probably had hardware 2.5 and got the new thing, which they then called hardware 3. He got the new the new board installed. But his overall opinion, and this is his opinion, which I maybe agree to somewhat. He says for $15K, it's definitely not worth it, and he doesn't even say it's worth the $2K he paid. Now I'll disagree with that, because I think FSD is that much better than EAP now, mainly because EAP has had 0 updates, right, for a while. So I'll disagree with him that at 2K it's worthless. I think at 2K that was probably a pretty good purchase, I think. I mean, overall though, it's still pretty expensive because I had to pay for enhanced autopilot, and I think for me total it was still like maybe a $5,000. I think back then it was 3,000 and then 4,000. I can't remember exactly what it was now, but it wasn't 15K, right, with the charging now.
What I'll say is the crazy thing thinking about this in mind is, so I first started developing software about 30 years ago is when I've been writing software. I've spent more money on the software of my car than I've spent on developer tooling in my entire life of 30 years of writing software and developing, which is also how I make my livelihood and make, all the money that I make that I can afford the Tesla. And it's kind of crazy to think about from that perspective. It's like, I spent more money just on my car's software. What was I thinking?
Yeah, it's a lot of money. And just to finish with this guy, so he talks about what works. He likes navigate on autopilot, the lane change, whatever. And I think he thinks Summon works. I'll have to disagree with him there. But he's saying
never gotten it to work right.
Right. Here's the things that don't work: auto park, smart summon. Okay, he's differentiating summon from smart summon. Yeah, definitely. Summon works if you're just saying rolling forward and rolling backward. Just that works. So it doesn't work. Auto park, smart summon, auto steer on city streets, traffic and stop sign control. He says those are all gimmicks and barely useful. I think city streets is actually pretty good. I think stop sign control is actually relatively good, actually. But he's definitely right that smart summon not so great, and auto park is that one's
useless.
That's the one that's really embarrassing because you can get
lots of companies have that.
Plenty of other vehicles have auto park and it works right. And one of the things I didn't mention about my long trip that is a real issue, and I'll put this in the same basket of auto park, is the windshield wipers. Out of nowhere, and this was embarrassing. I'm like driving people around in Atlanta, and we're just driving out of nowhere. What? It's not raining. What? And it'll just start going, and I'll have to go through the trouble of trying to turn it off. And if I'm using FSD, guess what? Off is grayed out. So I can't even turn it off. Best I can do is turn it to 1, so it doesn't go as frequently, because sometimes it just goes nuts out of nowhere. And we talked about why does auto park not work, and why does the rain sensor not work, right? It doesn't work because compared to other people, right, to other manufacturers, because other manufacturers have here's a package, here's a encapsulated thing, like, you know, by Bosch or somebody, right? Here's the unit that does the auto park for you. Here's the unit that does the you know, the smart wipers, and that's a self-contained unit, and it works, right? Whereas here's Tesla using their general sensors, right? Their sensors that do lots of things, and then just putting some, you know, some neural net that's supposed to do that job, and it's a low priority compared to all the other things, right? They're going to make more money getting FSD to work right than getting their auto park to work right, or getting their windshield wipers to work right. So it's a lower priority, and it just doesn't work that
What
well.
interns are for, though. They should just
seriously.
dedicate
Ouch.
one
Hire
smart
somebody
intern
and get the thing,
onto
because
that
it's embarrassing.
feature.
It's embarrassing
Yes.
that those things don't work as well
Yeah.
as cheaper vehicles that have been around for
that intern
decades.
is why your wiper doesn't work right.
No, it's they literally I feel like an intern would do well. They literally do no one, literally no one works on it for months or years at a time. They just kind of leave it alone. At least that's what it seems like.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, it's and I think that probably has to do with somewhat the management style, right? Elon, as they say in the Isaacson says he doesn't multitask. He serially hyper focuses. He hasn't thought about auto park in a long time. He definitely hasn't thought about the windshield wipers in a long time. And it's what he's complaining about, probably, that then trickles down to somebody actually doing something about it, right? And I'm sure they all had plenty of things to work on. And if he's not complaining about that, then
the problem is he lived in California and now he lives in Austin, and neither of those places does it rain often enough for him to get the damn wipers to be fixed.
Except that there's no rain, and yet they turn on anyway. Okay, and that's the experience. All right, they just come up for no real reason, and it's especially bad. Went down to, say, Boca Chica, where there's a lot of sand blowing up, and hey, okay, I just scratch up my windshield because I just wet drag some sand across the glass, or dry drag some sand across the glass. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, at least they're I don't know, making improvements on some things. FSD itself is feeling pretty great, and V12, man. Let's see it. Hopefully that comes out soon. We all get to experience it. But
well, just one more thing. We talked about they reduced the price in FSD, and part of that is them able to sort of turn their knobs for supply demand, right? And similarly, it's been this referral program, which for a while was pretty low in value, and then they sort of added some value to it in terms of people actually getting cash. But they added some things where you have a sweepstakes, where you can get a raffle to get a Cybertruck, and I also recently noticed there's a raffle to get a Performance Model 3. They don't tell you anything about what are your odds of winning, right?
Yeah.
So you have no sense of what the actual value is there.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is that they have and I think if I remember correctly, for 2,500 referral credits, you can get premium connectivity, which costs $10 a month, which I tend to get because I like to have the sort of satellite type maps and also the main feature that actually makes sense to pay for if you want is to be able to sort of get live video from the car, right? To see what's around it. To me, that's a useful feature. $10 a month, you get that for a year for 2,500 referral points. Okay, but now they've added, for 15,000 referral points, you can get a factory tour. That seems kind of nuts to me. 15,000 points. It used to be you could go get a factory tour just for being an owner, and you'd have to sort of sign up for it, and they'd schedule it. But I mean, supposedly, I guess if they have enough owners now, that's a thing that has more demand. But that seems grossly overpriced just for a factory tour. But it's another way for them to sort of burn through these credits, I guess, if they want to, you know, give some people something to use for these credits. I suppose it might
Monopoly
be very
money.
valuable. Yeah, it's basically monopoly money. But yeah, I find it a little like, to me, like, what would I pay for a tour of the factory? Like, I don't know, $20 maybe. Not like, you know, I don't know. Do we do the math on that? Like, if you give a value based on the connectivity, right? So that's a value of $120, right? 12 months, and that's 2,500. If we're gonna do math on live on the air, so 2,500 means 2,500
$720
$720
for a tour
for
of
a
the factory.
factory tour.
Yeah. Like, I'd even be willing to pay like $100, but 700? No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
100 would
that's
be the
ridiculous.
absolute like ceiling that I'd be willing to do.
Now, there's a little bit of a differentiation in that, you know, looking at it, they're offering the Fremont plant and the Austin plant. Now, Austin would be much more interesting to see. Like, I've
Yes.
seen the Fremont plant like maybe 4 or 5 times. Austin is, you know, new construction and, you know, should be more state of the art, and it's definitely much, much bigger. So
Yeah.
yeah, but still, not even $700. Come on. And they don't, it's not like they cover room and board or anything like that. So they're not paying for your flight or giving you a
Yeah.
place to stay. Yeah, that's that's an interesting decision. But you know, again, he said it's monopoly money, so you know, they can change it and do what they want with it, right? It costs them nothing, right? So just like those without knowing the odds, those raffles basically cost them nothing, right? I mean, the chance could be 1 in a billion or something, you know.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be some legality there, right? I mean, obviously, Tesla's lawyers are way better than I will ever be at law, even if I became a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer. But like, isn't there some legality around raffles and things where you have to say the odds or something if there's financial, like, I don't know. I guess not. It's not a lottery technically because you're not spending real money. Maybe because it's
Yeah.
monopoly money, you can get away with not
Monopoly
saying what
money.
your odds are.
I mean, it used to be with a lot of these things, there had to be a way to join the raffle without paying.
Right, if it's a sweepstakes, you have to be able to
yeah.
enter without paying. But like, yeah, it's weird. It's like, I don't know. I would think they can't not let you do that, but since you're not spending money directly to buy it, maybe they get away with it. I'm not sure. I certainly, or maybe they tell the odds after you buy it. If anyone has purchased one and you get an odds email, let us know.
Right.
It's a very interesting thing. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like actual value to me, yeah, like I said, that you know, I got some supercharger stuff. I should have done it before I went on my trip. The supercharger credits are, you know, useful, and then yeah, the premium connectivity, since I do that, and that is you know, that's a $10 every month. It's kind of, you know, that can add
Right.
up. But like, yeah, I would, you know, I don't really care for the Cybertruck, but if I won one, I'd be like, hey, that's cool. I'd probably drive around for a little bit and then sell it because I don't really have a need for it. But like a performance Model 3, you know, I'd take that and sell my current car. That'd be cool. So, you know, yeah, that'd be neat.
but
But
would it be a Project Highland? Ugh.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you
I don't know.
want,
There's
you
no
want the
inform- probably
Highland
not.
refresh.
Yeah, probably not. They don't have that yet. May not ever. I don't know. We'll see. Rumors abound. Alrighty. So that's our show, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us as always. Thank you to the producers, and Danny and Adam and James and those helping behind the scenes. Seb, we'll see you probably next time. I don't know. He'll be around. Yeah, if you want to become a supporting member, you can always go to teslamotorsclub.com. Do that. Like and subscribe, yada yada. Standard social media nonsense. Go to Twitter. We have a Twitter account and all that good stuff. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, and we appreciate it.
Laters.
Later, nerds.